Okay, right. So there we go. Right then, so welcome finally to the webinar on time management, tools and techniques. I'll go through the slides and pick up certain points. There's some activities to do after this, which are also listed in the handout that you've got. And just to warn you, there is going to be a fire alarm here in about 5 minutes, but it's a test, so I won't be leaving the building. So time management. Obviously, you cannot manage time. Time is a finite thing, but we can think more about our effective use of the time that we have. We've just been a classic example of ineffective use, faffing about with technology, which we'll resolve, so apologies for that. Nothing we could do about that. So you may also like to think about some of the things that I'm going to talk about for some of your team, if you feel it would help them. So if you feel you have members of staff who would benefit from some of the activities in here, from thinking more about how they spend their time, then this might be useful. So I'm just going to the second slide here, so which is saying about how this webinar links to your apprenticeship. So on the screen now is an extract from the endpoint assessment. And this is actually what we're going to be measured against. So it's talking about this area coming from personal effectiveness and management of self. And in terms of what you have to know, you need to understand time management techniques. And in terms of what you have to do, you're all working on your personal development plan, but this is about using time management techniques to manage your workload and your pressure going forward. So there might be areas from this that you pop into your PDP as well. So in terms of what we're going to cover, by the end of this webinar, it's coming up on screen now, you will be able to explain techniques and tools for time management. And only the ones I mention here, you don't need to know hundreds. Explain methods that you can use to prioritize activities. So you will all be used to prioritizing things that you see as urgent and important, but there's actually a matrix that can help us think that through. You can already describe approaches to planning, but again, methods to prioritize and approaches to planning are all part of this. In terms of the skills and what you're going to do, what we quite like you to do is carry out an analysis of how you spend your time at work and then finalise your personal development plan. Some of you have done that or are in the process of doing that. And as I say, just to emphasise that these details that are on this slide, slide number 2, come from the endpoint assessment. So we know that your portfolio will show the skills bit at the bottom, the bits of evidence that I grab, that I create, that I observe. But they'll ask questions around the top half, the knowledge of this, during any discussions they have with you. All the answers are always going to be in the resources that we've given you, so there's no trick in any of this. Going to the third slide, this is just showing the contents of this webinar. So we'll talk a little bit about the importance of time management. We'll talk a little bit about some tools and techniques and how to prioritise work activities. So, but before we start, let's start with you, because people are individuals, and you will remember from the insights training that Leanne did with you about how we prefer to do. I'll just let that go. How we prefer to do things in certain ways based on who we are. And there are some people who are natural planners and others who aren't. So thinking about you, just ask yourself these questions. When you have a task to do you prefer to put a deadline in and then plan the stages along the way before you start, or will you just jump in and crack on with it? How about lists? Do you use lists? They might be IT lists, post-its on your screen, or paper-based, or tasks. If so, how do you use them? So you might write them or create them, but do you use them after that? Or is the creating them the only way you use them? Think about when you've got to be somewhere for a certain time. Do you prefer to arrive slightly early for things, or are you happy to arrive in the nick of time, screaming through the door at the last minute? And also, if I were to ask you, what is time to you? You know, what is it? Is it a commodity, or is it just something that there's an endless amount of? So if I'm asking you those things, what I'm really asking you is, do you like to plan and then act? Which would be, if you're one of these people that puts a deadline in and then thinks about how you're going to meet that deadline, you are somebody who likes to plan and then act. If you create lists and you use those lists, you tick things off those lists. You might even occasionally write something on a list that you've done so that you can tick it off, because it's a nice feeling. And if you like to arrive early, you're probably a planner, a natural planner, somebody that likes to feel organised. But if you're happy just to crack on, or you maybe rely on the last minute adrenaline rush to get something completed, then you may be one of these people who likes to explore a bit and then respond and go with the flow a bit more. Neither is better than the other, but if you are naturally a planner, time management may come more easily to you, but it might also be a bit more stressy for you. If you're one of these people that can go with the flow, being late or not quite keeping up with something or having to change something can sometimes cause you less stress. The reason I mention this is I've emailed you a handout which has got 2 columns on it, and it's divided into people who like to plan ahead and people who are quite happy to go with the flow. And I would suggest you have a little look at that after today, because it might give you some tips and hints that suit your personality type. And I'll pick that up with you when I meet with you individually. Okay? So that's just to learn a little bit more about you before you start thinking about time management. And I've just put this in because it made me laugh. So if you can't see it, that's a shame. If you can, it's a slide which is a cartoon. So I won't talk across it, but there's a cartoon there, and it's about spontaneity. Anyway, so that's just there for a bit of brevity. Yeah. So what are the benefits of managing time well? I think it's important to take time to make time. But again, to motivate us, remember when we went back to motivation, to motivate us, we need to see what the benefits of taking some time to plan are, or we might feel so busy we just want to plunge in. So if you time manage and plan your time well, you may well be able to achieve more within work hours if you're more proactive and less reactive. I don't know if you think it makes tasks more enjoyable and rewarding because you can do them properly. Certainly if I know I've allowed time for something and I can finish it, it's quite satisfying rather than leaving it undone. Can you, if you manage your time better, enjoy better health by lowering stress and anxiety? Stress and anxiety are often caused by things that are outside our control. If we feel that time is in charge of us rather than us being in charge of time, it can make us quite stressed. Having a little bit of control doesn't necessarily reduce as much, the amount of work you have to do, but it might make you feel better about what you have to do and reduce your stress. Meeting deadlines more easily. If you have too much work to do, you cannot meet every deadline, but what you can do is negotiate longer term deadlines for things which are less important and prioritize other deadlines. So I think what I'm encouraging is if somebody says, I need this by Tuesday, if you know you can't have it done by Tuesday, but you could have it done by Thursday, you could maybe propose that. So meeting deadlines might also be part of renegotiating deadlines. We all want to have a better work-life balance, and worrying less and feeling that we don't have to take work home or stay late is helpful. I can take a lesson out of this. I stay late. But work-life balance is very, very important for our well-being. And if you've got good work-life balance and you're less stressed and you achieve deadlines and you feel happier in your work, it will improve your career prospects because you'll feel capable of doing more, and others will see that you can manage more. Because it's difficult to hear you and talk to you, I was going to ask for some other suggestions, but there are more. You can think of those. But there are benefits to managing time well, but to manage time, we have to take time. So let's look at some techniques. Now, in the handout that I've written that we sent, this is all in lots and lots of detail. So I've just taken a diagram from it. Before you can start managing your time, it's quite useful to find out how you're spending your time. Now, we all know we're busy, but I wonder if it would be a surprise to look at how we really spend time. So the proposal here is 3 stages here, is for you to keep a diary or a log of a week. I'm saying a week at work. It's up to you. It might be a day at work, but maybe a week at work, longer if you know you need to capture a reliable period. I know, Lauren, for you, you have times of the working month when you've got targets to report on. I think one of them clashed with your off-the-job training the week before last, and you've absolutely got to get things done in that week. That may be a less good week to do an inventory of what you have to do, or a good week if you want to see how you are under pressure. But maybe it's up to you over what period you capture. So first of all, keep a log. So if we look at the bullets to the right-hand side of that, so the thing about keeping a log is to record what you are actually doing as opposed to what you think or planned to be doing. So I know today already my time has slipped all over the place, and I've wasted half an hour of your time faffing about with the technology here. So if you were recording today, you'd put what you actually did, and your electronic calendar might look very different. You know, when did you actually start the webinar? Well, 12:30. So I wasted 30 minutes of your time. Okay. And then note each activity, when it started and finished, and add notes if necessary. Now, we're not talking about, you know, I went to the loo, that was 3 minutes. You might note if you get distracted or pulled into a conversation. If somebody sprung something on you, maybe your line manager springs something on you and that knocks out your plans. So note down what you're doing. You can do it on a notepad. You could do it on you could produce a grid which says Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and has, you just write things along the top. I really don't mind. Or you might log it on your desktop calendar. Once you've captured a period of time, and be honest, in the handout it talks about being honest about how you spend your time. There's no judgment in this, okay? And having a conversation with a colleague in the morning for 10 minutes is permissible. Work is about more than just getting the job done, and sometimes you need to have some social conversation with people to get jobs done. So then once you've captured it, look at the activities in which you're involved. Ask yourself how productive and necessary these are. So have a look at your diary and which activities or people distract you from work. I know what distracts me, and so I go and shut myself away in the library when I've got to do something where I must not be distracted. What distracts me is a couple of colleagues, a couple of them whose banter is hilarious, and I know I'm going to pick up on it, and I know it's going to make me less efficient. Sometimes I allow myself that lack of efficiency. If I'm on a Friday covering some emails, I'll allow myself that because work is also about being social. But there are times when I recognise I really need to shut myself off. I also think about when and where you are at your best and most productive. For me, it's early in the morning in the library. What is it for you? When is your productive time of day? Is it lunchtime? Is it afternoon? Is it the middle of the night if you're on a night shift? I know if I've done something detailed in the morning, asking me to write something detailed in the afternoon, I'm going to have to go back and check it the next day. I'm not good at it. What about you? And then how can you bring those strengths to other areas of your work? So are you able to organise things around when you're at your best? And are you able to ring fence time? Are you able to go and work somewhere else? It won't always be possible, but occasionally it might. And then when you're analysing this, the bottom box says break the activities into areas. So that's what you're doing, and so you've looked at what you're doing and how your time is used. You've looked at the activities in which you're involved, and you've asked yourself how productive you are during that. But now you might want to step back a little and break the activities into areas. So how long do you spend in meetings? How long do you spend doing emails? You probably work through breaks. I hope you have breaks. Casual conversations, I've talked about them being important, but also to be limited. And then major tasks that form the basis of your work. That is what the Perform team would call rocks in your diary that must be there. So I know Leanne and I, my line manager, I gave her a notepad which said I survived another meeting which should have been an email. And I wonder how many times we are called into meetings that could have been done differently. If you notice that, you could talk to people about that. You might be able to make things more efficient. On the other hand, you might find you've got a lot of emails going on, and it might be better to write down all the things you want to talk to one person about and then go and have a half-hour meeting with them once a day rather than ping-pong emails back and forth. I used to do that. In the days before emails, I used to do that. I would have a half-hour with people. So what percentage of your time is spent doing the essentials, the purpose and the focus of your work, and how much time is spent doing the things which are thieves of your time? Are there any activities which can go either completely or be delegated to someone else to do and then report back to you? So that's one activity to do. How do you spend your time? Have a look at that, and you know, do that over the next month or so, okay? Then in the handout that we've given you, there's something called the Pareto Principle, or the 80-20 rule, which you have probably heard about before. Doesn't matter what you call it, 80-20 or Pareto. Pareto is sort of the guy that came up with it. What the principle says is that 20% of your time, if it's focused on really important tasks, will often generate 80% of the results. If you've got lots and lots of trivial tasks, you might spend 80% of your time on the trivial things, if you see what I mean, and only a little bit of the time on the stuff that you're really there to do. So if we can reduce the amount of time we spend on, when I say trivial, maybe the things that you might be able to delegate, that you might be able to do smarter, the emails that you might be able to embrace in a conversation, that can often improve your effectiveness overall. And focusing on planning in those vital tasks first and ring-fencing time for those is important. The other thing is, this relates to people as well. You may find that 20% of your people, challenging people to manage, may take up 80% of your time. Is there a way of managing that down? That's why performance management and getting people under control, if they are dominating your time, is really important. It takes time at the beginning, but it saves you time later on. The 80-20 rule is only a soundbite. It's only part of what we need to pay attention to. What's really important is organising stuff. So when you review your activity log, you should be able to identify your most productive 20% of effort that produces 80% of your output. I'd be interested to hear if you can. So let's look at planning and prioritising. Are they pigeons? I think they are. What's the opposite of prioritise? Cancel, disorder, disorganise, disperse, scatter, forget, let go. Okay, so how do we plan and prioritise? There are two tools here. The first one, I think possibly the most useful, that you may have heard or you may not have heard. This is the Eisenhower Matrix. You will have heard of Eisenhower, President Dwight Eisenhower. He gave a speech in 1954 where he referred to a former colleague, a former college president, pardon me, somebody he was at school with, who said, "I have two kinds of problems, the urgent and the important. The urgent are not important and the important are never urgent." So what came out of this was Eisenhower's own ability to get a lot of important things done when he was president in the Oval Office. And then it was coined and called the Eisenhower Matrix. So the idea of the Eisenhower Matrix is to give us a language to focus on how we plan things. And you probably do quite a lot of this naturally. But let me talk you through it, okay? So boxes 1 and 2, these are the most important. And all of your most pressing and demanding tasks belong in box number 1. So those are things that are urgent and they're important, and you need to do them, okay? And if they're urgent, they need to be done now, okay? The other thing you might then have is tasks that are important but not urgent, and they go into box number 2, and you plan those. So if things are in box number 1, they're urgent and they're important, you do them now. If they're important but not urgent, you can pop them into box 2. In other words, you can decide when you're going to do them. So you diary them in. You ring fence a slot to pop them in because they can wait, but they are really important. So you diary them in, okay? Everything in boxes 1 and 2 needs to be scheduled. I mean, urgent, you might just get it off your list straight away. If it's important but not urgent, you diary it in, and you know then you can put it down in your mind because it's scheduled. You're going to come to it, okay? There'll be a reminder. Things that fall into box 3, so delegating and dumping work. Box 3 is for things that are urgent, but they're not important for you to do, or not important for you to do now. So an example might be you may have unread emails that you know aren't important. You can schedule them, you can go back to them, or meetings that need to be planned in. And you might be able to give someone else the tasks of dealing with some of these things or not, okay? So you may have things that need to be arranged that someone else can do for you that you can delegate. Delegation doesn't mean things aren't important. It just means that someone else could do it. You don't have to do it. So these are actions that you're responsible for, but that you could give to somebody else to do. And then box 4, items and tasks that you can pop into box 4. They're non-important and non-urgent, and actually think about whether you need to be doing them at all. So I've put some examples in the handout. You know, fiddling around on the web, we all do it, but you get distracted. Having a chat in the corridor, organising your files, they're the nice to do, but not the need to do. You can probably pop them into the 4th area, or you might even be able to dump them, okay? So there are things that I would like to do, but I don't need to do, and some maybe I can get someone else to do, or none of us need to do them. So really, this is about recapping what's urgent and important. You need to do that straight away. What's important but not urgent, you can plan in to do that. What's urgent but not important for you to do, number 3, can you delegate that to someone else and then follow it through? And are there things that are on your list that actually you don't need to do? Get rid. And if that's the case, what we're asking you to do, and I'll come to this at the end, is do your own Eisenhower Matrix. So when you've done your activity log and you know how you spend your time, you might then be able to look at your list of things to do going forward and use this process of planning. Ask yourself, maybe just stick this up on your wall. What's urgent and important? What do you need to do now? Think about it, do it. What's important but not urgent? Plan it in. What's urgent but not important for you to do? Can you delegate this to someone who can do it within the time frame that's required? And what falls into none of this? So should you be doing these things at all? So that's urgent and important, important not urgent. Those are quite useful things for you to think about, ask yourself. So I'll move on from that. Another framework that's in your handout is the 4 Ds. Interestingly, number 4 is the do. So do, number 3, delay, number 2, delegate, number 1, drop. And that's just another way of explaining Eisenhower. So do what's essential, delay work that's not needed immediately, but plan it in, don't just procrastinate. Delegate work that you don't have to do, and drop unimportant tasks. Maybe delegate them permanently, maybe make them somebody else's job permanently as that person grows. And we'll come back to delegation in a minute. So this is just a simpler way of another way of looking at Eisenhower, really. And you can use whichever you prefer. So whilst we're on delegation, let's just have a little think about delegation. I always thought that delegation was asking somebody else to do something. I didn't appreciate that delegation is a way of growing members of your team by giving them tasks that they need to learn to do better or need to learn to do full stop. The challenge with delegation has always been for me, leave it with me, I can do it faster. But actually, you need other people to take things from you, to free you, particularly now you're becoming managers and are managers in areas, to free you from things. You're going to have to let go of some of the things that you used to do and train other people to do them. So delegation is a way of growing your staff, and that's what this diagram is talking about. It's saying you on the left-hand side there as management, and on the right-hand side, the people that work with you, for you. You delegate to them, that arrow, you delegate to them the responsibility, and with that you delegate to them the authority to get a task completed their way. That means you letting go of them doing it your way. As long as they do it to the right standard, they might approach it slightly differently. But you remain accountable, that line underneath, you remain responsible, accountable for that task you have delegated. So you're giving it to them to do, you're giving them the authority to do it their way, but you've set the standards that you want it done to, and you remain responsible. So that's delegation, okay? And sometimes it's frustrating at the beginning because it takes longer to explain to somebody how to do something, but ultimately you will start shifting things from your list to theirs. And there's just some pointers now I've put up on the right-hand side. So number one, choose carefully what you can delegate, okay? There may be tasks that you really don't enjoy doing, but you need to hang on to them. There may be tasks that you really enjoy doing that you should delegate. So have a think about them. Coach the individual that you've delegated stuff to if they need coaching, and supervise the tasks, not like a helicopter overhead, but supervise the tasks that you've delegated. Just check in from time to time. Are they doing what you need them to do the way you need it done? Provide support where you need to, okay? Where you need to. Number three, allow the individual to grow through carrying out delegated tasks, and maybe those tasks will become part of their responsibility going forward. And then number four, remember that you remain accountable for the tasks. This isn't about blame, it's about responsibility. You've delegated it, check that they're okay, take it back if you need to. And then something that I like to live by, delegate, don't abdicate. Delegating something to someone means giving it to them, giving them their blessing to do it the way they do it, but setting out very clearly the quality elements, the way it should look, and then remaining responsible. So you don't abdicate, you delegate, you check in. My line manager is really good at that with me. She gives me stuff to do, but she checks in, and she checks that I'm okay. And she's always there for me to go back to, and I appreciate I'm very lucky. So this is less successful in a webinar where we can't talk to each other. I was going to ask you what works for you. I'm going to come on to some tips and hints, but let me just say at this stage, if you know there are things that really work well for you, then stick to them. Don't reinvent the wheel. Things that work, keep. If you want to try some new ideas, try them. You may try them and dislike them, but stick to what works for you. And I'm just going to give you some helpful approaches, and I'll be able to wrap this up in the next 5 minutes so that you're back on time, so we've caught up with time. So helpful approaches might be, and a lot of this is in your handout, okay? Half an hour planning at the start of your shift will save you time later. I promise you it will. Because you will immediately look at those urgent and important things and prioritize those. You will move the important but not urgent things into another day, another time. You will shift that down. Out of office on and say I'm doing something else. I'll come back to my emails at 2 o'clock this afternoon. That's perfectly acceptable. You can say to somebody, if it's urgent, bleep me or text me on, okay? There's very little that can't wait. Tara and other clinical people, I appreciate patients can't wait. But certainly with emails, people need to be managed. They need to learn not to expect an immediate response to something that's not urgent. And if they don't give you enough time in an email to get something done, then manage their expectations. Say, okay, I'll get this for you this one time, but next time I need a couple of days' notice for that, please. Okay, that's perfectly acceptable to ask for that. If you have a manager whose preference is to do things at the last minute, that's not fair on you if that adds pressure. Okay, so explain to them how you would like some time, some notice. Plan in reactive time. Do not fill your diary. By all means, fill your electronic diary and block out areas where you say not available. And you don't need to give a reason why you're not available. You're just not available. You're doing your job, okay? So plan in that reactive time. In these days of electronic diaries where people see a space and assume you're free, block out time which says admin, emails, organisation, planning, paperwork. Block that time out. If you don't need it, that's nice. You've just got some time back. I covered this at the beginning. Remove distractions or remove yourself from what distracts you. I told you about me locking myself in the diary away from people and things that distract, in the library rather, from people and things that distract me. Sometimes you have to remove yourself. That might mean removing your mobile phone. That might mean leaving your mobile phone somewhere else if that's going to distract you, okay? You can say no, or you can propose a revised deadline. So when people say, I need this by, and you know that's going to cause you a problem, it is perfectly acceptable in a very professional way to say, I hear what you're saying. I understand you'd like this by tomorrow, but that's difficult for me. I could get it to you by Friday. Or you could say, when do you desperately need it by? And then, as I say, start maybe re-educating people who work with you into giving you a better lead-in time, if that's possible. Again, I appreciate in clinical areas that isn't always possible. Think about your objective before that telephone call or before writing that email or when you're going into that meeting, before it happens. Think about what you want to achieve and try and stick to it. I am not good at this, okay? So if you know that the objective of a telephone call is to confirm a date and a time for something, then don't spend 10 minutes talking about something else. It's nice to, but it might not be a good day to. With an email, get to the point again. I'm saying I'm not very good at this. I'm not always the best example of this. With an email, you do want to say, hi, how are you? But then go into what you want to talk about. If you're going into a meeting, even if you don't have an agenda, and we'll cover this later on in the apprenticeship, you need an agenda in your mind. And at the very beginning, why don't you set out the expectations? I understand that today we have half an hour. Is that all right for everybody? In my mind, by the end of this, we want to achieve this. Is that what everybody else thinks? So what do you want to achieve? Okay. If somebody comes to a meeting that you've called and they're not prepared and you can't achieve what you want to, reschedule. Don't push on with it. Don't push on with it. If they haven't had time to prepare, reschedule. Delegation, we've talked about. Delegate effectively. Protect your work-life balance like your life depends on it, because do you know it does? The quality of your life depends on it. So don't feel guilty for saying, I will finish this tomorrow. The Thursday before Easter, I'd built up quite a lot of time, and I knew that by 3 o'clock, I could have left at 12, but I had a lot to do. By 3 o'clock, I was no longer being effective. I was too tired. So I called it. I said, I'm going now. I'm taking an hour. My brain's left the building and I need to go with it, was I think the phrase I used. Protect your work-life balance. If you have arranged to do something in an evening and you know leaving on time is important, then leave on time. And if somebody says to you, can you stay to do you know it's perfectly all right to say, no, I can't, not tonight. You don't have to give a reason. You don't have to give a reason. Okay? Don't justify it if that's the end of your working day. You could say, can it wait? Can we pick it up in the morning, please? I need to go. You don't need to say, I need to go because I've arranged to pick up my daughter, or because I'm going to the theatre, or because. It's at the end of your day and you need to go. That is enough. Okay? Listen to your inner voice. Again, this is something I'm not very good at. I hear myself say yes when inside my stomach is screaming, no, you don't have time. Listen to that voice. Maybe delay answering, count to 10. If somebody says, could you come and meet me here? When you know you've arranged to do something quite different, you may say, can we do this by phone? That's going to make me late for my next meeting. Might we rearrange? So if your instinct is to say yes, give yourself a few seconds and think about the implications. Listen to that inner voice. Listen to your gut. And if your instincts say, no, I need to rearrange, then rearrange or propose an alternative way of doing something. That's important. Okay, so we're coming to the last slide. So next steps. This isn't next steps today. This is next steps when you ring-fence time. Try and carry out an analysis. That's a posh word, but an analysis of how you spend your time. As I say, maybe set up a grid, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or if you do shifts, you know, your long night, your link day, your 2 short days. How do you spend your time? And then just note it. Don't judge it as you note it. Note it first of all, and then have some time to look at it. Look at the results objectively. Make some decisions about when you are at your best, how you could use the time more effectively, how you could organise tasks into the time when you know you're firing on all cylinders. Use one or more of the techniques then to plan your work that we've talked about here, or that I've talked about here. So maybe the Eisenhower Matrix, the urgent and important, the important, not urgent, the neither important nor urgent, delegate it. Or maybe the 4 Ds. Have a look at that. See if those help you. Explore them. If they don't help you, don't use them, but know that they're there. Then that old chestnut, reflect. How did these activities help? I mean, I've said how, but did they? Your answer may be no, they didn't help. If they did help, what did you learn? If you do apply using Eisenhower, how does that feel when you start to do it? Does it feel useful? Is it something you do already? And what might you do in the future? Think particularly about managing other people. You know, when they ask you to do something, think particularly about saying, not today, but I can tomorrow, or I need a bit more notice for that in future. Take back control. Say it with a smile. A smile is a wonderful way of making words softer. Say it with a smile, but you don't have to justify why you need some notice. You don't have to say it makes me feel uncomfortable. You can just say I would prefer it if you gave me some time. Okay? PDPs, we're all over this like a rash at the moment. I know you're working on them. So finish that. And then upload all of this to one file. And of course, record that time you spent undertaking the work on the section on one file. Whilst I'm on one file, I am moving everything across gradually. So for some of you, it may be looking a bit odd at the moment, but by the beginning of next week, it should all be looking hunky-dory again. And that's really all I have to say at this stage. I'm just going to stop sharing the screen so I can see if you have any questions for me. I can see you again now, Tara. So do any of you want to say anything, type anything? I can close the webinar here. But is any of that helpful? Doesn't have to be?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
And I spoke to Emmeline the other day, and she talks a lot as well about the important or the urgent, and how important it is to just make sure that you don't overwhelm yourself and things that can be left until tomorrow.
Yeah.
Don't stress about them, and I think it will help me because I always think I need to get everything done before I leave to go home. Like every little single job needs to be done, but really, it doesn't.
And the thing is for you, Tara, and I know you can still hear Lauren, if you are the same personality type as me, oh, fantastic. Oh, fantastic. I'm just reading Lauren's comment. While I was on here, I managed to make a table for the week diary to do the time management table. You were multitasking, girl. Fantastic. Yeah, but you've got a toddler in the room, haven't you? Haven't you? Somewhere around your ankles? Yeah, so you're multitasking. Yeah. And look what Leanne bought me during this, which is just cruel, isn't it? Because I've had to sit and look at it and not eat it. What I was going to say is, Tara, for you, I know that work that you need to do, I think when you look at that handout that I've sent with are you one of these people that's on the left or on the right, you'll probably fall into the people that are on the left. You like to put a deadline in. There's always a list going on. If I said you've got an hour, what would you do with it? You'd have a list of stuff and you'd try and tick through the stuff that you should do before you did the stuff that you'd like to do. I don't know, Lauren, you can maybe tell me if that's your personality type or if you're more the type of person that's more able to go with the flow. I'll wait for you to type in. So, Tara, if that is your personality type, you are going to feel, in a value-based way, guilty if you don't get things finished. Or if your manager asks you to do something and you have to say, do you know, it depends. I flip from both. Okay, so Lauren's saying it depends. She flips. That's quite healthy, Lauren. I wish I was more like you. As I get older, I'm better. I balance it more. But a technique that helps sometimes, guys, when you're feeling pressurized is to make a decision not to make a decision. Make a decision not to make a decision. So if you don't know something, put it on your list for tomorrow to think about it tomorrow, and then you've got rid of it from today. But try not to, you will always want to do more than you can, Tara. Don't pay attention to the person in the room with you if you need to. But try, yeah, so Lauren's just saying, I've learned from when I was really bad at time management, I always do listen, prioritize, yeah. And I have seen, Lauren, for myself this morning, how effective that is for you. I met Lauren this morning, Tara, and she's whipped through a load of work. But we had to ring fence time, didn't we, Lauren? We had to be quite brutal, and you had to book time away from work because you weren't being given space in work. And I know, Tara, you've done the same. You've booked time out. Don't feel guilty about that time. It's your time. I'm a big stick to beat people with as well, if you need time. And burning yourself out by doing too much isn't helpful. It's not sustainable long term. But maybe accept that you just feel guilty. You'll always feel you should have done more, and that's just part of who you are. And don't beat yourself up about it. But maybe sometimes look at the things you have done in a day, not the things you haven't managed to. And I think you'll find the balance is right. Lauren's just saying, if I can't get it done, then I don't, and I make sure I tell them I'm not able to do it. Fantastic, because telling somebody what you haven't done is just as important as telling them what you have. Yes, ring fencing time always works if I don't get given the time, but there are also times when I need to stay to finish the tasks. Yeah, that's great. So I think we all know how it feels. We all know this is a busy trust. We all know that we're short-staffed. Yesterday, it was a critical incident. There were no beds, so we all know what that feels like. Just try not to beat yourself up about it. If you know your preference is to get everything done, be kind to yourself, move things into the next day. Yeah. And I'm sorry about the technology at the beginning. The main priority is always making sure if you do the extra, then take it back. Absolutely, work-life balance. Nobody ever on their day of retirement wish they'd spent more time in the office. Ever. When you ask people what's important when they reach, the end of life, you'll know this, Tara, more than anyone from the wards that you work on. I bet those people value their relationships and those cups of tea and the hand-holding and the chats. Yeah. Because those are the things that are important. So protect your own time and protect your own life. Protect it. You work hard enough. So I'll leave it there. I'll stop recording in a minute. And thank you for putting up with the technology. And we'll upload this. I'm going to re-record the other one so that we can upload it in the time that we had for it. So thank you very much. And I'll let you go. Thank you, Lauren. I'll let you go. Okay? And enjoy the rest of your day off, Tara. And put this time down. Yeah? All right. Okay. Bye, girls. See you again. All right. Take care. Bye. Take care.